All right. Hello and welcome to our second edition of Nourishing the Planet. This is a webinar series created in collaboration between the Program for Health, Wellness, and Climate and the Program for Nutrition and Dietetics here at Duville University. Duville University is really known for its healthcare education, and we've added this new master's program in health, wellness, and climate administration. And so Nahid and I have really, put our heads together and thought, how can we, utilize, our strengths, educating about healthcare and thinking about climate to fill a need, add some resources and fill this gap for this group of nutritionists and registered dietitians who can really have a big impact in this space. So today we have a really great presentation. We have Whitney Brooks here to present about roots of sustainability, a Haudenosaunee perspective on nutrition, climate, and existence. So really important that we're considering, Indigenous perspectives on nutrition, Indigenous perspectives on the environment. And especially on Earth Day. So like this is really timely and important. So without further ado, Whitney, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. I was really glad to be invited to do this talk today because these are things that deal with nutrition, climate change. Like these things are actually, they hit pretty close to home. They're very close to my heart. And it's something like I'm really passionate about. And it's part of the reason why I kind of got into nutrition as far as helping, being able to be of service with human nutrition as well as like benefiting the planet. So I'll introduce myself first. Like I said, I'm Whitney Brooks. Hold on, I got my notes here. So I am from the Seneca Nation. I'm Turtle Clan. I'm a registered dietitian. I graduated from Duville in well, when it was Duville College back in 2020, but it's now Duville University, which is really cool. Uh, and so I've been in practice in a variety of areas as a registered dietitian. It's been really quite a journey. But I do specialize in cardiometabolic conditions like primarily diabetes, heart disease, things like that. But I also love weight management and bringing that compassionate care to that area. And I'm also very passionate about plant-based nutrition, not only from personal experience, but from what we can see with prevention. So one fun fact about me, I'm one of about 300, there's a few more than 300 Indigenous registered dietitians in the United States. Not but not including the rest of North America, which includes Canada, and also Central America. But in the U.S., I'm one of about 300, so it's really nice. And there's over 500 federally recognized tribes. So kind of see like there's technically not enough for everybody to have one, but I'm glad to be representing and having connections with other Indigenous dietitians across the U.S. here. And I really, as a dietitian, I really love bringing that perspective of who I am to nutrition care, not only for individuals but also communities. So my talk, just to give everybody, I've done 1,000 presentations, with PowerPoint, whatever, whatever. But for this one, since I wanted to talk about some of my culture, historical context, things more closely related to who I am. I want to do. We're gonna go storyteller mode here. That's where I kind of really, I really shine here because we do have lots of options for screens and finding images. So I do encourage you because I'm just gonna be talking. If you want to take notes, have something ready because there might be something that piques your interest in you. You can jot it down, and that could be worth something checking out later. On your own. Just kind of give you a general overview of how my talk. Um, Overall, the gist of this, my talk, I want to bring an Indigenous perspective to, it's a global issue that we have. It's very multifaceted and it impacts like so many different areas of our lives. So one thing that I like to kind of bring to the light is being more like being solutions oriented. That's what I bring to practice. Because the problems are there. The problems are big, looming. I think there's going to be a lot, especially as this webinar series goes on. There's going to be a lot more like facts and figures going on, but just I do want to step us back to and provide a different perspective of looking at all of this that we might not see or know about. And I think the Indigenous perspective is really, really valuable. So we're going to kind of look basically. I want to look at our fundamental relationship with the Earth, like the planet, whatever we want to call it, and then all of our relations that are in there. There's there's so much that I could go off of, so this is really challenging to bring it all into one thing. But I can't speak for all Indigenous people. We're not a monolith, and there's so many unique varieties of ways of being, cultures, languages. But I can kind of bring from my people, the Haudenosaunee people, kind of see things through that lens. So hopefully my goal is that you come away from this like with a new perspective and seeing it in a different, seeing our bodies, our health, where we kind of fit in, maybe a little in a different place, ideally out of the doom and gloom of, some of the problem stuff. So after we learn, I'm going to give some historical context after the fun, trying to get across those fundamental aspects of like Haudenosaunee worldview. I kind of bring it back to nutrition, some basic principles of that we can kind of carry forward for today. So, ultimate goal, I hope we can walk away feeling more connected and hopeful today of all days. So, all right, let's get into it. So first, okay, scrolling down here. So first part, I'm going to kind of go I'll do a brief overview of Haudenosaunee roots in North America, where we're at, where we come from. That this is material that could cover a whole course, but I'm going to do my best here. Next, I'll go over into how we relate to existence and like it's kind of we got some big concepts here, but I'm going to do my best to water it, like, or just try to keep it simple. And then the state in which we're relating, ideally Thanksgiving, gratitude and connection, like all that fun stuff. And then we'll change gears, get into some traditional eating patterns, like those basic principles. And I'd like, and how they build into different food systems, because that's going to be something, some food for thought, good things to think about. And then at the end, we'll bring it all together. And I'm going to leave some time for some Q&A. So if there's any burning questions that come up, please, if you have your little notepad, jot it down, put it in the chat. The other moderators are going to be able to direct those at the end. Okay. All right. So without further ado, so brief history, lots of history. Unfortunately, these things aren't necessarily covered in typical school programs. So I'm really glad to kind of bring this context from a different perspective, not just from a little paragraph in a textbook you might have read in high school, to this talk. So first off, we'll start with the Haudenosaunee. That's what we call ourselves, also known as Iroquois Confederacy. We say that's what our enemies called us. It's a kind of a French slang word, because French were the first people, the first Europeans, not the first Europeans, but that colonized the area, because there were other Europeans that did come and didn't colonize, but that's another lecture series. Anyway, the word Haudenosaunee means people of the Longhouse. There's a lot of stuff that's lost in translation, so I'll just kind of give like the best possible thing. But people of the Longhouse. Now even this topic, like I said, there's like ways of living, infrastructure. Like it's really really cool to think about like how people live in a longhouse. Is a traditional structure made of wood, and it's kind of like it's basically in one straight line. And it's basically sectioned off, and there'd be like multiple families, multiple extended families living under one roof. Basically, it can be expanded. It's a very, very efficient way to live. It's nice. It's nice because there's the isolation wasn't, it's a whole different way of existing, especially when you think about prior, pre-colonization times. Like I mean, there used to be wolves in the area, like just those, those things that we don't have to deal with today. But it's really nice because this is kind of how we kind of organize our families and then our greater communities. So now Haudenosaunee people, so people of the Longhouse, this is it kind of represents like how we live and how we related to everybody. So Haudenosaunee people is originally 5 nations that came together. We did add another one, Tuscarora. So there's now 6 nations as part of our confederacy. I don't really care for the word, but it is what it is. So we thought of ourselves as living in the same longhouse. So picture all these nations living under one roof, like cooperatively, like a family, extended family. So that's a really nice mindset to think about, like with how my people live. So we were as all these nations coming together. We were practicing representative democracy for several hundred years prior to European colonization. Really cool to think about. There's a lot of roots of what we know as democracy today in our culture, in our background. And I highly recommend, if anybody wants to go do a deeper dive into this, University at Buffalo has a really good Indigenous studies program. There's a Seneca scholar named John Mohawk who he's written several books. That one's worth a Google. So um, now member nations in this, picture, how we conceptualize this going, these member nations going from east and west. We kind of lay figurative longhouse across like what is now like New York State, because our territories existed prior to the colonial lines that were drawn. So starting east to west, like east down towards New York City area, Mohawk, and then coming further east, Oneida, Cayuga, Onondaga. Onondaga people are a central New York area. There's Tuscarora. Those are one of the newest member nations. They've settled up towards Niagara Falls area, and then we get to my people, my nation, the Seneca Nation. So we have several territories throughout Western New York, and on a or my we fun fact, we call ourselves Onondaga, and that's what we call ourselves. But it was the colonial leadership who I guess named us Seneca because Onondaga was too hard for them to say. So that's another thing that's worth a deep dive. But that's what we call ourselves now. This is how we know each other. So this kind of provides like the historical structure, these very populous, like powerful nations of people coming together for a common goal. So I really think this is a nice thing to think about when it comes to like how we're going to approach what we have in front of us now. I do like at this time, just kind of real quick mental exercise, like imagine being part of a nation that lived closely, cooperatively, and peacefully, for the most part, harmoniously with other nations, with the common goal of the well-being of everybody. Like that's a lot to think about. That's a nice thought. So I want to kind of keep that feeling keep that feeling alive because ideally I think that's what we should be aiming for. So so getting more into the history. Basic. This is the Cliff Notes version, but like every group of human beings in human history, like we separated into factions as our populations grew over many, 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 many generations, and we didn't get along with each other, just like any other group. So there were many generations like impacted by warfare. This is several thousand years ago, and so because all of our member nations, we originated from the same people, we do have linguistic, cultural, all that stuff like in very closely in common. So that kind of like helped us come back together. And we do have a historical figure. His name is Peacemaker, like that's what he's called now. He's actually from the Huron people, like across Lake Ontario. So, but he came to us. And the fun fact, the first person to accept his message of peace was a Seneca woman. Um, very, very cool because there's a Seneca woman who, she's still revered to this day. Her clan line actually still exists, which is really, really, really cool. That clan line goes to the Tonawanda Senecas, which is that's amazing. But anyway, so getting back to Peacemaker, this is the guy that he's kind of brought like a higher level of consciousness, brought peace, basically, and basically, this is so tough to bring down, but eventually through his journey across our all of the member nations territories, getting to everybody getting on the same page. The message basically is not only rooted in peace, but power is one of the words that kind of gets translated. But really the translation like comes down to more like empowerment, not power through like domination, but like individuals and individual nations becoming empowered. And another one, poor translation. They say peace, power, righteousness, but that's more of an older English word that that they equated to one of our often used terms like called good mind. It's like I said, translations aren't great. We can get into that all day, but this journey unified all these previously warring nations who were fighting with each other for generations. Um, and this message of personal empowerment and individual nation empowerment help people remember who they were and um, I guess put their weapons down, and everybody collectively decided that those weapons would never be used again, not against each other. So this is a wonderful history. Please look into it. Like it's really fantastic. And another fun fact, if you look on, like, I think it's on the dollar bill, or there's usually a logo with the United States, and there's like an eagle clutching arrows. There's usually like 13 arrows representing the 13 original colonies. But that original message came from Peacemaker, who this was kind of the basis of his talk, where like he took one arrow and he broke it easily, but then he put several together and nobody could break it. So that story impacted the founding fathers of the United States as we know it today. So that had a big impact on them as far as unifying against the British. So that was the Cliff Notes version of how Haudenosaunee people came to be. And that history very much informed like how we relate to the earth, how and our culture. These things are all tied together, all intersecting with each other, all that stuff, all integrated. So now, just to give you a little snapshot of like our worldview, so our place in the universe, like our existence, like we don't often, and in modern times we're so busy dealing with like so many different things. Our existences are very different from in contemporary life than they were several hundred years ago, especially several thousand years ago. Like, but we are still the ongoing legacy of like all of that. So it's really something right now that comes across as different, but it's not new to think of ourselves um, as humans living in this reality here. So there are some wonderful scholars we can look into and everything. I love getting into that. But basically, all we have this in common with all other like all indigenous people who still have those ties through to their histories and their origin stories. Everybody has their own origin stories. Every indigenous people, they have their cultures, they have their languages, their ways of relating. Um, and something that we have in common with a lot of the people of the Americas, um, um, our understanding of life and work, like it's really cool because like we a lot of people believe that life kind of came from the stars and is supported by the earth. So there's other things like thinking of where like elemental iron came from in the universe. That's a fun trip to think about. So I just trying to tie together like yeah, because it does. I don't want to come across as sounding primitive or anything, but this understanding is like it's really cool that it came from the Americas, from people who have been not have been treated as less than by colonial powers. So, but basically, one of our guiding principles is that like the earth is I don't know how we came to this, but we understand it as a being, as a planet. Um, it's a living, the earth, the planet that we live on is a living, it's a nurturing, self-regulating like being. Um, so it kind of explains like how all these natural phenomena come together, and how it all ties into how life not only is sustained and maintained, but like how it relates to it. And our relationship, the way we think about how how we treat the earth and how we relate to our world, like we call our earth mother. So that's it sounds it it doesn't have the same connotations I think in English, but when we think about that relationship of um, ideally like with a mother and child, like and how life comes about, it kind of makes sense conceptually, like how like that's how we should be treating each other because like it or not, we are all dependent on everything that sustains us. So I'll sit with that for just a second. So now when we think about that, we've heard the term Mother Earth. Um, I highly encourage everybody, especially today, to kind of sit back and kind of like maybe spend some time like thinking about that. But when it comes to like the Earth and the planet, like we know that we know that the planet is very watery, and that the land is really important. And in Iroquois or in Haudenosaunee cosmology creation story, origin story stuff, we really like to treat the land that we live on as like a living creature itself. Like when you think about the nature of the land masses, the continents that we live on, like land it changes, it grows. Um, like we've seen images of I think one thing we all heard about like the islands in Hawaii, the volcano like expanding land. Like there's a lot of these natural features and or natural things that happen that really do reflect some, like this this world view of our planet as this living dynamic breed or being. So one thing, fun fact, we do the words that for this continent. We do in our language and culture, like we refer to it as Turtle Island. So um, we with we kind of I have no idea how this came to be. It's really cool to think about. But when you think about like the shape of like North America, like if you zoom out, if you see it from space, it does actually kind of resemble a turtle with like Central America kind of being the like the tail. And that's how like we I always think that's cool because like that's how we always called this continent. Um, so now let's see the like this kind of level of understanding of like our land, like our how we view the earth and the planet, the land we live on. It really is a testament to the human roots and the civilizations of the Americas, like including like the infrastructure, like all the human knowledge, the oral literature, the trade networks, the cultures, all these things that we have that have brought us to today. So just knowing about these cultural things that have like relevance to things that we're finding out today is like really cool. Um, like just an example, like one of our guiding principles, like we understood inherently that all life is related, and then now generations later, now with with it with more technology, we've gotten into like genome sequencing, and we're finding out that like we have genome in common with things like plants. It's really cool to think about. So yes, like there's a lot of things that for some way somehow were understood by by our ancestors that are that have now been proven by what we call like Western science or whatever. So I think that's really cool. That's my best job of condensing something I could talk about all day. So next thing. This is kind of more a really important aspect of Haudenosaunee language and culture that can help guide us with everything that we're facing today. How we actually relate, given how we view the world and our existence. So, a big aspect of Haudenosaunee culture, we all have this in common. It's called the Thanksgiving address in Seneca. We call it Ganoyo. And I do have a kind of a small like a translate. This is a Mohawk version. All of our languages are like connected, so and very related. Um, but one thing that uh, I can say about it is like these are the translation of the word for it actually it kind of it's more akin to the words we say before all else, the words we say before all other words, basically. This is something that we do, and I really feel our contemporary culture could really benefit uh, from from this. But really, when we get together as groups of people, having that acknowledgement, because that's really what gratitude is like taking a moment to align yourself, your focus, your consciousness with the things that are, everything that that is. Like I call it existence in short, like the natural world, whatever label you want to put onto it. Um, but the Thanksgiving address is really and it's unique. They would always we'd select a speaker, somebody to bring everybody together and just say it. And this is really important. So we say it before like any kind of meeting, socials, things like that. But ideally, like it's to get everybody on the same page. Everybody in the same. This is what we call the good mind. Is when we're all realizing collectively together that we all come from the same place. So I'll quote so whoever put this cute little booklet together, you can find these at like if you visit any of your local Native nations that usually have museums or something, you can ask. You can look online, but these are really important words. But the Thanksgiving address is based on the belief that the world cannot be taken for granted, and that a conscious spiritual communication, I don't like the word spiritual, by the way, but conscious communication of thankfulness and acknowledgement of all living things must be given to align the minds and hearts of people with nature. So this is the guiding principle of our culture. So that's quoting John Stokes, who did who was part of the project that created this little booklet. Um, but the gist of it is really cool. So we'll just dive in. When we get together, the first thing that we acknowledge and express thankfulness for is the people, because we are all interdependent. We are all connected. I think the pandemic really showed us how closely connected we really are, and how, something started one place, like very much quickly spread throughout the world. So that's really a testament to like how connected people really are. And nobody's I'll touch on this later, but nobody's a lone wolf. No person really like exists without coming without other people, because there'd be no people here if we weren't involved with other people. So um anyway, the next thing that we kind of the next section of the address, we give thanks for Mother Earth. We spend a moment to acknowledge like all that is, so that we can be. We also give thanks for the waters, the fish, the plants, food plants, medicinal plants, like all the trees, all these things that we recognize as very, very important and critical to our survival and our life here. We give thanks to the animals, the birds. We even give thanks for climate things. We call them the four winds, the things that bring all these weather patterns to us. We call even thunder, we call them the thunderers. We refer it's like kind of like the storms, like the things that bring rain. All those cycles that we exist in, climate wise. We also give thanks to the sun. We take a moment to acknowledge the sun, and that everything comes from the sun. It gives every single day. We give thanks for the moon and all the lunar cycles, the things that impact us. And then we also give thanks to the stars, and then also who we call creator. That's our idea of, I don't like the word God, but because it means so many different things to so many different people. But we refer to that concept as creator. So this is the foundation of how we relate, with appreciation, with acknowledgement, and this is really important because it's very contrary to how we approach a lot of things, even especially nutrition wise. There's a lot of fear right now, in so many different areas, but especially nutrition, especially food. There's a lot of fear based in ingredients, systems, those things. But notice how different. I just want to step back. Notice how different, like that, like approaching a plate full of food like with fear is a completely different state versus gratitude and thanksgiving. And that's one of those foundational things. I think we definitely need to kind of shift towards, because it's a little different than how we run into a lot of problems when we approach something with fear. So but anyway, so all of this all together kind of brings us to, everything can basically be summed up. This is a big concept, but like mutual respect is when you acknowledge and understand, um, uh, coming from the same place. And then we respect each other. We respect, not only the people, but all those things we mentioned above, or in the address. So that brings me to, now that we're all kind of properly aligned, I guess, so like a different perspective, like this kind of gives way to like traditional food ways. And I like to talk about this because there's so many different ways to eat now. There's so many different ways to nourish ourselves now. And like I said, there's a lot of fear mongering. There's a lot of confusion going on. There's so much, I guess, parsing everything out, separating things. eliminating entire macronutrients from from an eating pattern and just to try to achieve some narrow aim. It's a really interesting time to be a registered dietitian, working with people. Um, so I like to talk about this because it lets us know. I hope we can take away from this like I guess more of a security, more knowing like that there are different ways to eat, balanced ways to eat, and it might look a little different than what we're used to, and like that these changes like they can be sustained on a population level, um, which is it's nice to think about where it's like okay, we're not in that fear state when we're approaching how the changes that are upon us. So I do have a handout that I posted. I just made a simple handout. It's not super splashy, but I shared it. I did a nice talk with a group of Native students at Rochester Institute of Technology. So I just shared that here, just so everybody has a little takeaway with what we're going over. But I'll go over it really fast. I'm doing okay on time. Um, Here we go. So, and I don't like to use the word diet because there's a lot of negative connotation. So I use the phrase eating patterns because that's kind of what we do. Um, so if you scroll up in the chat, there is and if you can't see it, we can email it out as well. But basically, and these are some of the key concepts that sustain healthy, strong population for many thousand years, which I think is worth noting. But like a lot, so I'll get into it. Like a lot of tradition, like a lot of sustainable ways of eating, a lot of it is plant-based, predominantly plant-based. Um, so one thing when it comes to there was a nice food system that was used throughout the Americas, both North and South America. The foundation that the staple crops were corn, beans, and squash. Um, those things um, those things can be found throughout, and they were all shared. And they fun fact about corn. Fun fact about corn, like it did come from the Americas. It did come from, and it actually um, originated in what is not what we now call Oaxaca in Mexico. And it had the success of that plant with people, with human beings, was shared throughout the continents like over many thousands of years. And there's a lot of deliberate care involved in having that plant with us. Like there's not just one variety. There are many. So like one thing I like to show, like I collect seed catalogs. So I like to kind of show like some of it, like because there's like it gives me hope just knowing like there's so many different varieties. Like we might not just necessarily see in our grocery store. But just I like to look at like all like the different varieties. Like there's a huge list of like different kinds of corn. So I encourage people to check out like different there are native seed companies as well. But there's a lot of we have like a lot of indigenous people have like really close relationship with these plants, and I think that's really cool. And I feel like it's something worth trying. Just take my word for it. But anyway, plant-based diets. Other people are going to try to touch on that a little bit more, but I do, as a general statement, like they are very sustainable. They're very doable. And this fun fact, the corn bean squash, we call them the three sisters. That's how close they are to each other and how well they work together. This lovely combination, it does provide adequate, it has sustained huge populations of people with adequate calories and adequate nutrients like protein, fiber, those wonderful things for a really long time. So we can I do say this because we can trust having a more plant-based diet, like bottom line. Now, another concept, but like I showed with my seed catalog here, there's a huge variety. Like we were open to variety and also open to like those new changes. because nobody wanted to like if there was something that was like a better option, of course, like people, in the Americas like latched onto it and they adopted it and made it family basically. So there's some like I said, there's so many different varieties, and I think about the variety of traditional indigenous diets, like much bigger variety. I think that like think even when we think of animal proteins, like I think of all the different like wild game, all the different types of fish, all the different types of birds, all the other, the huge diversity that exists, um, in all these different environments. It's so much more than our standard, conventional beef, chicken, pork, what have you, that we have today. And now speaking of speaking of protein, those animal proteins, like something to think about when it comes to nourishing ourselves. As I like to be a proponent of plant-based diets, but the wild game is like typically like much leaner than domestic animals. Fun fact, lots of people all across the Americas, we didn't have domestic livestock. So when we think about our relationship with domestic livestock now, we I feel like I want to encourage people, like we can trust that like our human bodies will be okay with less of that. So, and another thing with it being with traditional diets being predominantly plant-based, like there's more fiber. We, as the standard American diet, we typically don't get enough, and ideally we want, at least 25 grams, 25 to 30 grams. Men need a little bit more, but um, we can count on a good amount of fiber when we follow these kind of principles. And last one that's really important, a really important concept with like a traditional eating pattern, um, a sense of community and gratitude. And I really feel like that's something that's missing a lot in how we consume and how we nourish ourselves today. Um, there's a community when it, especially my culture, in food cultivation, how we acquired other foods, animal proteins, and consumption wasn't just an individual thing. Like I said, people lived closely in families, um, and I like to think about, like, one of the a modern American holiday that came from it has roots in Haudenosaunee traditions. It's Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, the U.S. holiday is celebrated for being thankful for different reasons. That's another lecture. But I think the concept is still there. It's like that's a really nice holiday because it's real. Like, it's still one of my favorites because we're supposed to give thanks all the time. But think about like how it feels to come together with your family and share a meal. Like it's not about gifts and consumerism. It's actually about sharing a meal and being thankful. So it still stands out today as like a unique thing. But that sense of community, it wasn't just exclusive to people. It was also a sense of community with our natural world, we call them, it comes in English, we call it non-human relations, but like we just call it, like we know that we're related. Um, and we have a lot in common, like, back to that original concept, we all come from the same place. So these things in our foodways, in how we nourished ourselves, how we can move forward, is really just recognizing and prioritizing our impact on all of our relations. So, and I really think that the sense of gratitude and the spirit of being thankful and appreciative, is like I said before, is like a whole different state to approach our eating patterns now. Um, especially with the changes that are coming and the changes that are going to be upon us with the earth and our climate changing. So yeah, um, I'll we're at 12:44. Okay, so I did good on time. Now, I just want to have some kind of some closing thoughts before we go into question Q&A here. I do want to point out one thing that sustainability is not a new concept. I know it's often presented that way, and there's a lot of things that get presented as like these wonderful new groundbreaking ideas like permaculture and those have indigenous roots, like because there's been people that have been practicing this for millennia, and really like the concept of sustainability. It's only new to people who are disconnected and have forgotten, I guess, what we call our original instructions, who've had that historical kind of break with that connection. So just pointing that out, like just another reason to kind of to center Indigenous people, to respect and protect Indigenous people, wherever they may be. Um, Another thing I like to throw out there, to really a point I like to drive home. So just remember that masses of human civilizations and populations have survived, not only just survived, but they've thrived on predominantly plant-based diets. Um, so we can trust that changing the composition of our plates, changing our sources of protein, we can trust that we will be okay with more fruits, with more vegetables, more whole grains, more beans, legumes, um, all those wonderful plant foods. Like we're going to be better off. And if we look at the original dietary guidelines based on all the aggregation of science that we have, it really points to that same conclusion. So that deeper concept, we can trust that. Another thing, speaking about Indigenous people, and our perspective that's been around for a really long time, this is something I see come up in sustainability circles and topics and talks. But people, like human beings, are not the problem. And I really want to, in the topic of climate change, like I've seen people label it like eco-fascism, but however we want to label it, it's not that humans are the problem, but really it's the actual problem is our ways of relating to the earth, to our existence, to each other. That's the problem. So because there's so many indigenous cultures, still here today, that show us that human beings, we can be balanced, we can be harmonious with each other, we can be extremely resourceful, we can be extremely productive, and we can be reciprocators. We can have a closer relationship, like we can give back to the earth and not just take. We have a place, like we can fit into the natural world. We're not separate. So I fully believe that when we remember that the best of who we are as human beings, that I really believe that we can create systems, that nourish ourselves, like, and the planet. So, just last thing, just remember that Indigenous people are still here and still carrying on our cultures, traditions, our languages, like all these beautiful things that help us to remember, I guess, that original perspective. So anytime you see, coming up, you know, this is really an important perspective to have, and I think it's needed now more than ever. So really, anything that can be done, Indigenous people should be respected, and absolutely protected, during these times. So yeah, I
Thank
hope.
That's
I hope.
that's great. Thank you so much, Whitney. This is such a great talk, and I've got lots of ideas of my own. But with like 10 minutes left, I just wanted to see if others had questions.
Sure. Yes. All right. I,
Thanks, Whitney. I'll just jump in and say hi. It's so nice to see you.
yes, wonderful to see you too.
Thank you for a great talk today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I just wanted just to ask about, because you brought up the idea of fear in nutrition, and I just wanted to know if you've, had experience counseling um, and how sort of you work through overcoming fear in nutrition, which I
Oh,
know is a large kind of concept, but I'm just curious if you could expand on it a little bit.
so I do come across this in counseling pretty frequently. And I did work in a bariatric weight loss clinic, but also working with people on the weight loss medications. Um, but that's a time when we really had to focus and really hone in on what we making sure that our needs are being met. And I guess that kind of provides a better context. But there, people come into those sessions worried about because you hear so much, like, a social media is like a big giant, this crazy echo chamber. And so a lot of time in counseling is spent just talking about, like, okay, well, what are we afraid of with artificial sweeteners? And one thing I lean on that strong, like that chemistry background, and it's been really helpful. And I just kind of bring that concept, like, okay, you know, the dose makes the poison. Because I remind people, like, even water can be very harmful at large doses, at things that we can't handle. So, and I do like to remind people, bring it back, like, because there's so much. This is so common. This not only professional life but personal life. I hear it like all the time. We're like, oh, chemicals. Oh, I don't want any chemicals. And so I really try to bring that chemistry background, like, where it's like everything is a chemical. Like, it's okay. Like, meeting people where they're at. Like, I understand, like, because if you don't have a concept of something, of some of these things, of course it's going to come across as fear inducing. So it's just really a big part of it personally is approaching meeting the person where they are. Like, I don't dismiss fears. Like, I also don't I acknowledge them, but I try to work with the whole goal is like working through, and I use a lot of the motivational interviewing kind of stuff. But really, like, it all comes down to, like, I bring a lot, like, that mutual respect, because I can understand being afraid, like every human can. But it's just like, okay, how do we build a pathway, like, out of that? And I use a lot of, like, specific examples, like, where, sure, there's studies that show, like, okay, like, artificial sweeteners, like, in a massive, like, lethal dose would be poisonous. Like, and that we can't, like, it would probably be impossible. I think there was one, I think we'd have to drink like 37, like, cans of, like, Diet Coke for there to be, like, and bringing it back to real life, where it's like, okay, we're not going to be doing that. We're not going to be consuming, like, that much. And as far as, like, oh, there's a lot of confusion with natural, organic, oh, the pesticides, poison, but, like, we got to look at kind of what the evidence says. I try to bring those things up only with the intention of, like, helping to alleviate some of that fear. So yeah, that's kind of how I get into it in session.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. All right. Any other? All right. Is everybody able to access the handout? You can print that out or keep it on your computer.
I just saw Beth unmuted, so I think she might have something.
I did. I was going to ask a question. Here, let me get my camera on. Thank you so much, Whitney, for your presentation.
Yeah.
I just had a question, just as a fellow dietitian who is in community health, and I also have a private practice. Like, what are ways that we can be, this was very informative, but let's say I am meeting with a patient from the Native community. Like, is there anything I can do to, I don't know, make sure there's better experience, or just be more, like, culturally responsive?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. Thank you. Yeah, and that's a really important question that I guess all of us healthcare providers should, because cultural competence and cultural respect is, like, really important, and it's really needed in healthcare, especially with people avoiding people avoiding healthcare because of that fear, because of that dynamic. So one thing, especially when it comes to working with Indigenous people, mutual respect is the key, and respecting, because there are things that somebody who's European American isn't familiar with, and there's different ways of thinking. There's so many different contexts, like, because even the way languages inform our mindsets, like that's like really cool. It's really cool to get into, but it really does make a difference, because there's a lot that's lost in translation. So just knowing that not every message and every communication is going to be coming across or received the same way, and just knowing that, so just kind of giving extra space to allow for some understanding. And if you keep this energy, this presence of mutual respect, where it's like, okay, you don't have, allowing people to feel safe, like keeping an air of non-judgment, because that comes across, it comes up way, 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 way too often. And the fear of judgment, like I see it like so much, even in my own community. It makes people avoid, like seeking help and seeking assistance. But keeping the that respect there is really key for emotional and like psychological safety. And I recommend like just trying to be open to new ideas, because like when we have any mutual relationship, there's like a back and forth flow. It's not a one way. It's not teacher student. People, especially, I mean, adults don't like being treated that way. I don't think anybody likes being told what to do. Like from a hierarchical dominance position, like, nobody likes listening to their boss or whatever. So anything that we can do to avoid that, and to be to sit at the same table, to sit at the same level, and be open to what you could learn from that person that could inform your perspective. So that's kind of the gist of it. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it's helpful. Thank you. I do have to hop off, but I so appreciate Duville for hosting this. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we might have time for one more question if anybody has one. Or if not, I might just ask my own. I was so happy to see you talk about, the Three Sisters agricultural scheme, and the way those plants work well together, and the way that we get balanced nutrition from it. But in some of my own research, I've become really interested and invested in the mast trees and the nut crops that the Haudenosaunee people would have cultivated, would have intentionally planted and managed for. And so I'm wondering if there are recommendations that you're thinking of in terms of steering people more towards, our hickories and many of our walnuts and our native trees that sequester so much more carbon than, almonds, which aren't even a nut. It's a stone fruit, and they grow in California and suck up all this water and need so much. They create such a carbon footprint to be transported. So I'm wondering if that's another lesson that we might learn from the traditional practices of your people.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I don't know who claims they discovered the term food forest, uh, but just in the same way that indigenous people in North America, North and South America, like, we're not actually discovered, we're just here. In that same way, those these native these plants that are adapted to these climates, these ecosystems, they've been here, and they were deliberately planted, and they're we see a lot, like with native this push towards like native perennial landscaping, like those are really nice. Like I see it starting to catch on. But I think it's like a really great, I really want to see a lot more investment in that, because when it comes to like these native perennial plants, they can be productive and like reciprocate. Like it's not just these like these exotic tropical or these exotic ornamental plants. They actually have a purpose and like they actually support much more around them than that. So like that, I think that's like really amazing. Like that's one thing that we can do possibly is like, you know, like check out some of these like native seed companies. Look at native perennial plants. Like the I do I even have one of those I probably have a catalog somewhere. Actually right here. Yeah. So I do have so this is one. Prairie Moon Nursery is one. I told you to collect these. But there's so many. There's so many, but they, you know, they kind of give you like different plants, and there's a lot of edibles in there. Like amazing, like you mentioned, like the hickories, my parents have like a massive like butternut trees, like they call it white walnut.
Mhm.
Um, and acorns. There's other indigenous people like like they like oak, like the acorns that come from oak trees. Those are cultivate like and those there's a process involved because you have to cook them. You have to cook them, but those are actually viable food sources because like and a lot of you know how we deal with our plants today, like we view them as separate. You know, lands, you know, they have to be managed like in a, you know, very separate way, like our lawns. Um, it's kind of crazy. Like, and then how many of us have been to walked in a like in a public park and seen acorns just abundantly like everywhere? Like people don't even know like those are edible. Like that's a food source. Like that's a good source of calories, protein, like healthy fats, like all that good stuff. So, but yeah, I'm a huge proponent of like using those and like you if you have a backyard, if you're able to, like you can easily include some of these plants into your little microenvironment.
That's excellent. So thank you for that. So I just want to thank Whitney again for a great talk. Also, I love your take on Thanksgiving. It's sort of I've had similar thoughts about Thanksgiving, and it's why I keep telling people when they say they're going to Friendsgiving, I say no, it's Thanksgiving. The point is thankfulness.
Yes.
Even if it's your friends, the point is thankfulness. So thank you. This is such a great talk. We're going to be back here next week. We have Mark Rifkin, who is going to be talking all about plant-based diets and sort of the perceived benefits of sort of chicken and how he's going to unpack and undo some of that, turn that on its head and help us to think a little bit about the impact of some of these animal factory farms. So thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back again next week, and then we'll be back. We've got one more after that too. So stay tuned, and thanks for being here. Take
Thanks,
care.
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Thanks, Whitney. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.